Is it you lay it all out like you'll have carte blanche here?
No.
Come on down. No. How much can you say on a first date like that?
I could have said anything I wanted to say probably, but I didn't. It was more like, let's just feel each other out. I wanted to find out what he was interested in doing and what he was available to do. You know, I'm a salesman first and foremost, and I learned a long time ago that the best way to make a sale is to listen. So I listened as much as I could and let him talk, which helped me frame an offer that I could present to him.
What kinds of things is he saying?
At that point, you know, he had worked a lot with WWE, had been on the road a lot, done the 300-day-a-year thing, 2 shots a day on weekends. He had done all that. His kids were really, really young. He really wanted to be home more, so schedule was a big deal to him. That was first and foremost. Got a pretty clear idea right off the bat what the money was going to end up looking like.
Was it a figure that was prohibitive?
No.
Even though you guys were underwater?
We were underwater, but we had started turning things around.
Oh.
By that time now, I had done enough things, and this is another part of our history that gets overlooked or buried in some cases as a result of the narrative that's been out there for so long. But when I took over the company, it was a $25 million a year company that was losing $10 million a year. By the time Hogan came on board, all of the things that I had been doing for the 1.5 or 2 years preceding that were starting to make people at Turner Corporate go, huh, maybe Ted was right. Maybe this can work. The Disney tapings, you know, externally to the wrestling fans sitting at home or, you know, on the dirt sheets or wherever, you know, before the internet, they hated it. Wrestlers probably hated it. Corporate loved it because advertising loved it. That was working. The whole look and vibe and feel of the show was working corporately. There were corporate executives that now wanted to bring their families to Disney to see WCW because it's something that they owned. So the entire vibe started to change, and so did the economics. Our numbers started improving, and we were losing less and less and less. We were rapidly getting to that point where it looked like, in fact, in 1994, we were so close to making money. I think it was in 1994 that I bet the chief financial officer of Turner Broadcasting, and I bet him $1 that I was going to turn a profit in 1995. And a year later, I made him get on his hands and knees and hand me that $1 in front of the executive vice president of Turner Broadcasting. So we were close enough to the point where people started to believe in me that when the Hogan opportunity came to light, it was simply a conversation with Bill Shaw, who was my boss at the time, and Bill went to Ted, and Ted went, hell yeah, let's make it work.
How many conversations did it take with Terry to get him to that point where...
With me?
Yeah. He's talking to you exclusively, right? He's not talking to Ted or
No. Well, he's probably
Flair?
He wouldn't have talked not to Flair about money. And I'm hesitating because I can't remember whether the chicken came before the egg or vice versa. But part of it all dovetailed. It wasn't just the money and then we had to figure out the creative. It wasn't the creative first, then we had to figure out the money. It was getting Hulk comfortable on the creative side of the equation and what his future was going to look like while we were figuring out the money. So it was kind of going on at the same time. But Rick had nothing to do with the business side of it. He had a lot to do and almost everything to do with the creative side of it. Rick and I went down, we met with Hulk probably 2, 3, 4 times over the course of a month and a half or 2 months, talking about what could be. And it may have started out as something as simple as, well, how about this guy or how about that guy? Hulk wanted to work with Rick. That was the best play for Hulk. So then it became, all right, what do we do with Hulk and Rick? How do we build that story? How do we tell that story? Once the creative issues were solved, and we kind of had a pretty good blueprint of what we wanted to do, which was Hogan and Flair, the money side of the equation, that was really between Bill Shaw, myself to a degree, Bill Shaw primarily, and obviously Ted, because it was a lot of money. But it actually came together pretty quickly and relatively painlessly.
It's reported that the initial deal he agrees to is $300,000 per match for 3 pay-per-view shows and 3 clashes plus 25% of any increase in pay-per-view revenue above the recent WCW average, 25% of the house for a handful of house show dates in Europe and the United States, and 65% of all merchandising revenue for a period ending December 31st, 94. Ballpark? Sound like something?
The deal that I remember, you know, and maybe what I'm about to say is part of that, or part of the deal that you have information about. But what I remember is the nut was about $2 million a year. There were 4 pay-per-views involved in that. There were TVs that led up to each one of those pay-per-views that were included in that $2 million figure. And, you know, he may have gotten a big chunk of the licensing and merchandising off of his stuff, not off of everybody else's.
Gotcha. Creative control. It's a philosophy that's been bandied about a lot, but you said some very poignant stuff about it in your book about the creative control clause in Hogan's contract that I think was pretty telling, in that if you're working at the top anywhere, you kind of have creative control, don't you?
Sure.
Just the fact that you've put it in words.
Ask Stone Cold Steve
Right.
Austin, or ask The Rock.
You may appease me by putting it in print, but you're paying to see me.
Yeah, talk to the Click back in the day. Ask Vince McMahon how many times he had to jump on a plane and fly to a house show to get people to do crap they didn't want to do. So, yeah, while we may have expressed it contractually in Hogan's contract, and by the way, I've heard and read a lot, especially recently, about how a lot of people had creative control, which is, I think it's fabrication. I like to see a contract that I signed that, other than Hogan, gave anybody creative control. I don't think it really existed.
There were people claiming they had creative control under you.
Oh yeah, I've read that.
Okay. But does the fact that you've tacitly expressed it in a contract now start to flutter through the locker room and have others say, well, hey, didn't realize that was on the table?
There was some resentment. There's no doubt about it. There was some resentment, especially with guys like Ric Flair and people of you know, people that were higher up in the food chain. Yeah, there was resentment, no doubt about it.
The big parade at Disney, how does one go about pulling that off?
It's really pretty easy.
Did you just piggyback on the existing parade that happens every day and throw them on a floor?
You go to Disney and you tell them this is what we want to do, and it's Hulk Hogan, and they go, oh, Hulk Hogan, my gosh, the crowd at Disney would love that, and of course you have to pay for it. And
right.
You stage it, and you create a big parade.
Did you have to oversee that whole thing?
I didn't necessarily oversee it. There was other people working for me that did.